Welcome to the Miller Report, RealClear Journalism. I'm Maggie Miller. Today we're joined by the editor of RealClear Investigations to do a roundup of some of the pieces that we have shared that are some examples of the interesting dialogues happening today. Peder, thank you so much for being here.
It's a pleasure. Thank you, Maggie.
So let's start with a commentary piece that you wrote for RealClear Politics that basically points to this constant political warfare that we are seeing on both sides. Would you give a quick overview of what you wrote about?
Basically, what I think we're seeing is our politics is a politics of the indefensible. And that is, as each side seems to engage in some behavior that the other side sees unacceptable, it then prompts the other side to engage in that same behavior. So that when, for instance, the Democrats were going after Donald Trump, and many of his allies weaponizing the Justice Department and law enforcement, many Trump supporters and others said this is wrong. Well, now that Trump is targeting many of his enemies, I'm not seeing on the same side a principled rising up and saying this is also wrong. Instead, what I'm hearing is two things. One is, as the Democrats said when they went after Trump, somebody engaged in wrongdoing and we have to hold them accountable. And well, the other side did it, so it's fine for us too. And I was trying to point out in my commentary how completely destructive this is to our national discourse.
I mean, it does seem like, people do call out Trump both for some of the things that he's been doing as well. But do you think that, obviously your article quotes, and it says, beware that when fighting monsters, you do not become a monster. Do you think that Trump is taking it too far? Or do you think it's just the precedent, unfortunately, that's been set within our political system that they just go back and forth like this, and it's just whoever's in office, there you go?
I think he is taking it too far, and I think it's an example of how the extremes on both sides of the parties control things. And I think it leaves a bunch of us in the middle without much choice. So if you support Trump, you can very easily understand why you would want to, quote, hold these other people accountable. Same with Democrats to some extent. But I think that what I was trying to do is to just take a step back and see how we are being manipulated by the forces on either side who are engaging in behavior, which we then are presented with a sort of, do you support it or not? So there's also not a lot of room for nuance in this. And I just think that what I said at the end of the piece, and I fear, is that one side's going to have to win. And right now we just keep going back and forth. One side wins, they engage in egregious behavior. The other side wins, they do. And until we settle this one way or the other, we are constantly going to be, those of us in the sort of normal middle, called upon to take sides in a battle that we probably don't want to fight the way it's being fought.
Yeah, the question becomes, where does this end? How do we get these grown adults who are our representatives to just stop this constant going back and forth? It's not in our capacity to be able to do that. I don't know whose capacity it is to say, let's put this down and just put an end to it.
Yeah, and I don't want to say we're victims, but I think that our ability to affect things is limited. It's just I was just trying to hold up a mirror. I don't really have a solution, but I just really wanted to say, hey, let's take a look at what we hear ourselves defending for whatever reason. And it's troubling.
I think it's always important to look in and see what you're supporting or maybe not supporting. So I appreciate that piece out of you. Would you like to switch gears to some other articles that have been shared to our site?
Absolutely, because one of the things that we do at RealClear Investigations, in addition to the original journalism, which the Miller Report does a great job of featuring and getting in-depth conversations with our reporters on those, is we link every day to some of the most interesting and exceptional work of investigative and deep dive reporting done by other outlets.
Definitely. I want to start with a piece done by the Free Press titled Robert Westman and the Rise of American Nihilism. I would personally like to say that I don't like saying school shooters' names just because I don't think that they deserve the attention that they crave. But this article is discussing the person behind the heartbreaking school shooting at Annunciation Catholic School that took a few children's lives and hurt many others. This article discusses all these different groups of blame that are being assigned to different groups with regards to who's at fault for this man and his actions. I would like to start by clarifying something in the title, which is, what is nihilism and why is it ultimately what they're blaming for the school shooter's actions?
So what this piece did, and actually just to pull back a little bit, 2 days before we linked to this piece, there was a series of reports the AP and others did on phone calls about mass shootings occurring at universities and other schools across the country, and they were hoaxes. So that was an interesting thing, that there's been scores of these phone calls. It turned out that many of these calls are made by these dark web nihilistic groups that charge money to make these phone calls, $20 originally, and then reporting in Wired said that it would go up to $95. And they're nihilist to the extent that they're not trying to achieve anything other than mayhem. Their goal is simply disruption. They are deeply alienated people. And so then when I saw the Free Press article, I was like, this is beginning to explain a little more, along with the Wired article, about what's going on. And that this Minnesota shooter, as much as, maybe angst over being transgender, maybe gun rights, maybe problems with mental illness and alienation. But what this article was also saying is there's a small but growing number of Americans who believe in nothing and take pride, happiness, satisfaction in hurting other people, cruelty. And he made a very convincing case that there are enough of these people. It's just like terrorists. You don't need 10,000 people who want to go blow something up. You need 20 of them to have mayhem. And I think that it is an extreme example, these nihilists, which is they believe in nothing, of what you see more broadly in the culture, which is a lack of faith in institutions, lack of faith in authority, lack of belief in the system, in the country, in the belief of the rule of law to some extent. So this is sort of, to get back to my column in a way, this is the logical endpoint of what happens when you're not just a rational person defending, going after your political enemies, but it can lead you down a road where you believe in nothing, where you have no principle. And I thought this Free Press article, along with the piece in Wired that we linked to, really brought that out. And I was shocked by it. So I loved posting it just because I learned something. I was surprised.
I didn't know myself that the FBI had introduced a new category of criminal called the nihilistic violent extremist. And they have a lot of people that they're, keeping an eye on with regards to that. It does really seem that overall nihilists want an unhealthy society. They want general fury, hatred. My question would be to you is, obviously that having this term to be able to put this person into and say, this person probably was a nihilist, X, Y, Z. It also doesn't necessarily discredit the other reasons, some of the ones that you had just mentioned, that what people are pointing fingers at. So how do we come to terms with the fact that it's like, it's likely not one reason. It's not one thing for why this person did this thing.
Well, that's the human mind. And we are constantly trying to impose order on the world. And the world is often chaotic. And to some extent, nihilism then becomes a label that then serves that same purpose. But we always have to remember that it's a number of things. But I would say that this, again, I think the value of this is the end point. This is the extreme of a direction that a lot of us are heading in. And I think this total lack of faith and belief in much of anything is common. I think this, just again, with terrorism, there are a lot of people who don't like this government, don't like this or that. They're not engaging in these rash acts. But these rash acts, though rare, are a reflection back on symptoms that are going on in society. And I think that that's the value of this this reporting, and also just that it's real, that there are these people and they are tracked, and they are not like the militia members that we've talked about that want to have a revolution because they don't like government, or these people aren't trying to achieve anything other than to destroy.
I think it's an important conversation, and sort of like what you were asking for within your commentary. It's a moment for introspection, and it's a moment to be like, how has our society gotten to these places that we unfortunately find ourselves in? I did want to also talk about a third article with you before we wrap things up. Are you ready to turn over to that one?
Absolutely.
All right. So we have an article posted from Wired titled, "China is about to show off its new high-tech weapons to the world." First off, I feel like we typically have an article with regards to China and what's going on in there when we do these roundups. This obviously was an article from a few days ago. So did they show off? And what are the takeaways that we really need to be taking from this piece and all of this high-tech equipment that really does seem aimed at the United States?
We've run a series of articles. One of the things that we try to do when we pick the articles to link to is to show larger patterns. And I think one of the patterns that is going on is that China is a real powerful competitor of the United States. And not just because it makes cheap goods and makes money that way, or it's labor. I think it's because they are advancing in lots of areas where America has been dominant. And the weapon systems is one. We've run articles about drug manufacture, breakthroughs in research. They are not like Russia, which is a poor, relatively backward, well-armed country. China is in many ways equaling and exceeding America in the places where we've had the advantages in terms of brain power. One of the things that this technological breakthrough raises for us is the good question of whether we should be educating Chinese students at our top schools. If we are providing them with the finest education in science and engineering, and they're going back to a relatively hostile country to help them advance beyond what we can do in super competitive and important industries, I think that that's a legitimate question to ask ourselves, because they are an adversary. And I think the display of weaponry that Beijing showed is another wake-up call among many for how we should be proceeding in the future in this very important and complicated relationship.
And it did seem that the article was kind of pointing to how this thing that the Chinese are putting forward is a response to this of the United States, or it's a response in order to be able to do this with. So it's very clear that they're advancing with us in mind. At least that's what my takeaway was from the article. So it is a difficult. It's obviously not something that as an American you would like to see, but it is something that's very real and happening over there.
Absolutely. And we are competing with them. And I think two things. One is we probably don't have the same public displays. I would assume we have some pretty scary weapon systems ourselves and some high-tech stuff that we are working on. But I also think that a reasonable point can be made that they are much more aggressive and much more in league with bad actors. You will note that at this parade that they held in Beijing, Putin was there and the leader of Iran, and I believe also the leader of North Korea. So they are responding to us, but we are, to a much greater extent, a force for good and openness and transparency in this world than they are. And I think that you can tell people by the company of their friends, and you see who their friends are. And so this, again, is all the more reason why we should ask ourselves through our universities whether we should be aiding and abetting the advancement of a country that is in so many ways at odds with our values and our interests.
I think that those are interesting points that we should keep in mind with regards to China's high-tech militaristic abilities. So that's the beauty of, having all of these different viewpoints and having all of these articles that are then linked to our page so people can get a little bit of everything from every direction. If you want a little bit of this, if you want a little of that, you can find it all there. I think that wraps things up for us. Peter, is there anything else you'd like to add?
No, I just want to thank you so much. And as I say, every day we refresh the homepage at RealClear Investigations with both a mix of original reporting and also links to exceptional work being done by other outlets. And I think especially with investigative reporting, it's harder to find unless you go to all the websites. And I think a real value that we have is to bring that all together under one roof. And so if you visit us every day, you're really going to see the best work that's being done.
Exactly. And you'll also find the Miller Report on there if you're looking. Well, Peder, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Maggie. Take care.
That was it for the Miller Report, Real Clear Journalism. I'm Maggie Miller. I'll see you next time.